Hi, so we might get started. Thanks everyone for being here today for this information session on the Pride Events and Festivals 2020-21 Connection and Accessibility Grants. So just some housekeeping before we start. The webinar will be recorded and may be posted on the Department of Premier and Cabinet website for other potential applicants that couldn't be here today or any of the other information sessions. There is a closed captions option if you need, which is at the top where you see the ellipsis, so the dot, the top of the screen. If you click on that, you'll see that there's an option to turn closed captions on. Please, if everyone could turn yourselves to mute. And questions, if you can put them in the chat function at any time, and we will answer as we go. We find that this is more helpful and is relevant to the information being presented at the time. But there'll be an opportunity for questions at the end also. But before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, recognising that given the nature of this session that we may be on the country of many Indigenous peoples. For me, I'm on Wurundjeri country, and I pay my respects to elders past and present and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people that may be with us here today. I'd also like to acknowledge our LGBTIQ+ elders, advocates and culture changers, past and present, and express our gratitude and acknowledge the battles fought for us to be where we are today. So next slide, thanks, Marissa. Sorry, before we begin as well, I would like to introduce Marissa Blanchard, who will be helping, we'll be presenting together today. So just an overview of today's session. We'll have a look at the guidelines, which many of you will have seen already, either through emails or on our webpage. We'll be touching on eligibility criteria, assessment criteria, the assessment process, some tips and tricks to support you with writing your application, and giving you some insight into what the assessors will be looking for in your application. And as mentioned, questions at any point, but there'll be some time at the end if there's anything else that comes up. Next slide, thanks, Marissa. So as people would be aware, applications are now open and they close on Friday the 23rd of October at 11:59 p.m. Projects will need to be delivered between the 15th of December 2020 and the 30th of April 2021. Thanks, Marissa.
Great. So moving on to program objectives. In this slide, we will run through program objectives. There are 4 program objectives outlined. Your program must align with one or more of these objectives. I'll now run through each one by colour. So we've got purple, celebrate and build community resilience and promote connection across diverse LGBTQ+ communities. Blue, strengthen LGBTIQ+ community pride, places and heritage. Green, build public profile visibility and understanding of LGBTIQ+ communities. And lucky last for orange, we've got recognise and support marginalised or isolated people or communities. So moving on, along with the program objectives, 2 important principles to consider when applying for this grant are: starting from the top, we have capacity for events to be delivered effectively online to enable broad engagement of LGBTIQ+ people in rural and regional Victoria, as well as Melbourne. As COVID-19 continues to impact on all of us, sadly, this has heightened the isolation experienced by LGBTIQ plus Victorians, particularly in regional and rural areas and in outer metro Melbourne suburbs. With that in mind, this grant looks at ensuring LGBTIQ plus people are able to be engaged and participate in events for much needed community connection. On to the second principle, accessibility considerations enabling full, meaningful engagement of LGBTIQ plus people with a disability in all planning and delivery stages of funded activities. At the end of the presentation, we'll provide some resources to help you plan your event. It will be critical that LGBTIQ plus people with a disability are at the centre of development and delivery of the activities across our communities to ensure they are accessible, safe, inclusive and affirming. So over to Michael on who can apply.
Thanks, Marissa. So to be able to apply for these grants, you do need to be a community, not-for-profit or peak body community organisation based in Victoria, incorporated legal entity, or you can be a social enterprise that has a clearly stated purpose or mission related to supporting LGBTIQ plus communities. You must also have a current Australian business number, ABN, have at least $10 million in public liability insurance, and not have any overdue deliverables from other grants provided by the Department of Premier and Cabinet. So if you have applied and been successful for another grant provided by the Department of Premier and Cabinet, and you do have overdue deliverables such as progress reports or final reports, we're happy to work with you to submit them so that you can be eligible for this program.
Now moving into auspicing arrangements and partnerships. In the event that you are not eligible, we suggest looking into auspicing agreements. So your application must be submitted by the auspice along with a support letter, and the auspice organisation can be a local councils or education bodies. Moving on to partnerships, we strongly encourage partnerships. When thinking about partnerships, you'll need to keep in mind that all parties will need to be eligible. Just touching on the previous that Michael just discussed there. Partnerships also strengthen applications as there will be more opportunity for diversity in your program delivery. So get talking, make connections with stakeholder and community groups for more information on auspicing and partnerships. You can find some more information in the guidelines on page 4. So over to Michael.
Thanks, Marissa. So there are 4 assessment criteria in the application. And I'll just talk through a little bit of this. You can see that they're weighted differently in terms of the percentages. There's also a maximum word limit, so which might be a little bit tight for some, but it is just really encouraging you to think about, you know, what is the most important information that I want to let the assessors know, and including that information. So the first criterion is objectives and outline of your activity. So where we're asking you to identify the program objectives that your project will target. So they are the objectives that Marissa referred to earlier, which are also included in the guidelines. Under this criterion, you'd also want to outline the project you propose to deliver, including reference to the target population, the project activities, and the change that you hope will be created by the project, and outline the need for the project, and how this was identified. So you might consider community plans, strategies, policies, community consultation that's taken place. The second criterion is accessibility and community engagement, also worth 30%. So things to consider are how will your activity effectively and meaningfully engage diverse and intersectional LGBTIQ plus communities, including people living with disability, at all stages of project planning, delivery and evaluation. What evidence do you have to demonstrate and detail the involvement of diverse communities? And does your activity establish any community or organisational partnerships across LGBTIQ+ communities, again, which Marissa touched on earlier, the importance of partnerships within applications. The reason we're wanting to know about partnerships is because often one organisation, doesn't hold all the information, all the expertise, all the resources, all the networks to deliver a strong project. And so partnering with other organisations can help to strengthen project proposals. The third criterion is delivery. And so this is really where you can show us some of the project planning, but the project management approach that will be embedded into the project. So we encourage you to think about planning and timelines for this criterion. So how will the proposed activities be delivered? Noting that all activities should be complete by the 30th of April 2021. Skills and experience. So what are the relevant skills and experience of those involved in delivering the proposed project? And communication. So what will you do to promote the project with LGBTIQ+ communities and the broader community? There's also a budget section. So the budget section won't sit within the 300 words. There'll be a separate budget table that you can complete, which will show income and will also show in terms of budget. We do encourage you to think about and represent funding from other sources, and also estimate the value of in-kind support, which will be included to strengthen your application. We recognise that a lot of projects are delivered with more than just the funding that comes from the grant, that there will be volunteer hours, that there might be people within your organisation that can contribute a certain skill set that can support delivery of the project. It's good to represent those components in a monetary way in the application so that we can see the full value of the project. And the final criterion is outcomes and evaluation, which is valued at 10%. And so really wanting to understand how you'll collect data and information to measure and show whether the project has met the grant objectives that you identified earlier. So yeah, so that could be a simple survey. It could be as simple as counting the number of people that attend your online workshop. It could be gauging people's what people learnt through that online workshop and whether it was beneficial for them through a simple survey. I can see that there's a question that's come in, so I might just have a look at that. Is there an age limit on applying? I'm in my early 70s. No. We encourage everyone to apply that's eligible. You'll see in the guidelines that we are encouraging projects that are working with older Victorians. So no, there's no limit, and we strongly encourage you to put in an application assuming that you meet the other eligibility criteria. Great. Thanks, Marissa.
Great. So moving on to funded activities. On this slide, you will see a nice and long, extensive list of activities that can be and will not be funded. Some examples of what can be funded are online events celebrating LGBTIQ+ community, arts, culture, music, and history. Forums, conferences, and hackathons, activities that promote dialogue and understanding of LGBTIQ+ issues across the broader Victorian community. Examples of what types of activities that will not be funded are as follows, and they are activities that are not adaptable to social distancing guidelines. We'll have a link in the resources page, which will give you all the updates to our current situation with COVID. Excuse me. activities occurring outside the funding period, and that period again is between 15 December 2020 and 30 April 2021, and activities for retrospective funding for projects or programs that have already started or are completed. So that's that one. I just see a question. Not yet? Okay. I'll just have a look. So we've just got a question from Jackie Brown. Great that you have a focus on accessibility as a queer wheelchair user. That's fab. Just wondering if any of the grant assessors will have disabilities. Michael, I might throw over in terms of who we've got.
Yeah, so we've reached out to the Office for Disability to support with the assessment process. I don't know at this point if the representative will be someone with disability, but in terms of that lens for assessment, we're expecting that to come from the Office for Disability at the Department of Health and Human Services. Thanks, Marissa. So this slide we thought was important to include just so that it's that everyone that's putting in an application understands what assessors will be looking for. So and to note as well that many of the assessors that will be looking at the applications, and every application will be looked at by at least 2 assessors, have looked at many applications for different grant programs in the past, and these are just some helpful tips. So the first is to have a clear understanding of your project before writing. Have the conversations, jot down some notes, jot down some planning and some thinking, before you start writing the application. In terms of how the application form is set up, it's an online form and you can leave it in draft and you can come back to it. You'll end up with a username, like a login and a password. So you can come back to it, get some more information and come back to it, but really encouraging you to have a clear understanding before you start writing. Engage your stakeholders, the people that are going to be involved in delivering and attending and being part of this project, to know what it is that they want, what they can contribute, and what's important for people at this point in time. Read and reread the guidelines and frequently asked questions. There's lots of information in there that will help you with your application. So do take some time with both the guidelines and then the frequently asked questions go a step further, broadening out information that's in the guidelines. So take some time to read them through, to be comfortable and confident that your project idea aligns with the program. Make your application easy to read. So, take time to write, but then to edit as well. Remove any jargon, noting that assessors will be looking at a number of applications. So the easier it is to read, the easier it is to take on board what it is that you're wanting to do as well. So which is better for you and then for the assessors as well. It's important to link the activity and the budget. So there's obviously scope in the application form for you to outline your activity, but then it's also important to make sure that the budget and the expenditure in the budget matches the activity that you've outlined. If there are items in the budget that you haven't discussed in the activity outline, then the assessor is going to be questioning why is that item in the budget table? Or if there are things that you have discussed in your activity outline that aren't represented in the budget table, again, the assessor is going to be asking, well, how is the activity going to be paid for. So just ensuring that the activity and the budget are linked. Speak to program staff about your ideas. So that's us. So once you have a clear idea of what you're wanting to do, and if you're wanting to explore that further, or if you're wanting to test any of your thinking, send us an email and we'll give you a call back. Because we're not in the office, we don't have landlines, and so the approach that we're taking is asking people to email us, and then we'll give you a call back. And we can call back using interpreter service, and we can call back also using the National Relay Service. Be realistic. So what we mean by this is don't propose a project worth $100,000 if you know, when there's only $10,000 available and you may not have much more additional funding. But be realistic too in terms of your resourcing. Again, sometimes we can have incredible ideas, but when it comes down to delivery, we may not have the resources or the expertise or the funding to purchase the expertise to deliver the idea. So be realistic, and be realistic as well, you know, in terms of where you're at the moment. You know, the impact of COVID, how that's impacting on you, your community, your organisation, and what's possible right now. I guess that's saying too that just because there is a maximum of $10,000 available doesn't mean you have to apply for $10,000. You know, it might be more realistic for you and where you're at the moment to apply for $5,000 or $3,000. That's all okay. Include partnerships and evidence of support. Particularly if you are looking to have an auspice arrangement, we do require that there is a letter of support from the auspice organisation attached to the application. And as mentioned earlier, include in-kind support so that the full value of the project is understood.
Right. I can see we've got a question from Jacinta Miller. Is there an administration cost component in the funding, i.e. paying a worker to increase capacity for small organisations? I've had a little look at the FAQs, and more information on this is on page 9. So administration costs cannot account for more than 10% of the total funds requested. Just as these are sort of one-off grants, they're not really intended for business as usual, because we do understand that a lot of these are volunteer based and community organisations. So there is that allowance of 10% of the requested amount go to administration costs. So if you just put that forward in your budget, we can have a look at that. I hope that answers your question. Right, now moving on to the application checklist. Here we have a pretty colourful diagram to assist you in ticking off the requirements of your application. So we'll start from the red and I'll go left to right. Read the program guidelines carefully and also the FAQs. There's a lot of information there to help you write your application, and also as a starting point, determine whether you're eligible. Check that your activities align with one or more of the program objectives. So as I discussed earlier, there are those 4 objectives. Is my organisation or my proposed activity eligible? Again, very important. And again, if you're not eligible because you don't hold a current ABN number, look at auspicing arrangements. In your application, have you included partnerships and in-kind support? Down to yellow, application submitted by the closing date. This is pretty important as we won't be accepting any applications past that date. Ensure that you submit all the required documentation. Down to green, activity is within the funding period. Again, that's 15th of December 2020 through till 30th of April 2021. And last but not least, submitted all overdue reports from previous rounds. If you're unsure if you have any overdue reports with the Department of Premier and Cabinet, please get in touch and we can have a look at that for you. Great. Over to Michael for assessment process.
Thanks, Marissa. So the assessment process, you'll see there that there are 3 stages. So at this point, applications are open. Stage 1 for the initial assessment will begin on the 23rd or after the 23rd of October once applications close. And so that'll be an initial eligibility assessment. All applications that are eligible will go through to stage 2. So there'll be a panel review, so merit assessment. As mentioned earlier, there'll be 2 assessors at a minimum for each application. And we hope that stage 3 will take place in December. So that'll be for the Minister for Quality to approve recommended applications. And we're hoping to enter into funding agreements with successful organisations before the delivery start date of the 15th of December 2020. And probably just to note as well that this is an approximate timeline. We expect that this will be the timeline of the process, but it could change slightly.
Great. So coming towards the end of the presentation, this is the resources page that we've mentioned a couple of times. This PowerPoint presentation will be available for you to have. And so you've got all these links on hand. And so just to start off, I'll take you to the Pride Events and Festivals Fund landing page, just as this is the landing page for the has all the resources and how to apply on there. So can I just check that's come up for everybody?
Yeah, that's there.
Great. So just on this landing page, we have information about the accessibility grant. And you'll note here, this is the Submit Your Application tab. And so this is the page you'll see when going into the portal and applying. What else? We also have all the guidelines, FAQs, and the digital engagement pack to help you write your application, as well as some information, which I'll go back to once I close this. These event accessibility checklists, as I previously mentioned, these links will be loaded up onto the landing page shortly, but these are the links to the resources to ensure that your event is, you're taking into consideration accessibility needs. And last but not least, the COVID-19 information from Department of Health and Human Services, just to keep you up to date with all the current restrictions that are in place.
Thanks, Marissa. There's a couple of questions.
Sure.
So Kat is asking, has this project been offered before or is it new? So Kat, this is the 3rd year that the Pride Events and Festivals Fund is running, although this year it is a little bit different because of COVID. So previously, funding was available for face-to-face events and activities and festivals, whereas this year we are strongly encouraging that applications take place, that projects take place online to be in line with the social distancing guidelines that are current at the time of delivery. And also, like, happy to receive applications that include a flexible approach that can be adapted to guidelines at the time. But really, it's about encouraging people to connect virtually. And you'll see in the guidelines that there are a number of different examples of the types of projects that could be funded through the program. John has asked how big the total funding pool is. So it's $200,000, John.
Got another one from Ben here. Can the grant funding cover only the online and digital elements of a larger event? Overall, this grant round is for digital events. Just as with the current restrictions and not knowing where we'll be in a year's time, we do encourage that all events are specifically online there. Did I cover that properly, Michael?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think that's good. Ben, if you want to have a chat, just so that we can understand that a little bit better, happy for you to stay on the line at the end and we can talk it out, or happy to give you a call back tomorrow or the day after. Yeah. Yeah, there's one more question. Thanks. So it says, Jax has said, thanks. So undercurrent accessibility information for events list should also be added to the list of resources. Yes, correct. So the two links that Marissa spoke about to support events to be accessible will be added to the landing page for the program. Yes. There's one more question coming in.
Sorry, everyone.
So Anna's written, as with Ben, I'm keen to hear more about how hybrid events might be accommodated, a virtual event with physical attendees that might be flexible depending on the COVID restrictions at the time. And yes, so in terms of hybrid events, I think it's really important in the first instance that projects have a virtual and digital approach. We are really encouraging organisations and applicants to think outside the box so that can happen. We had a query earlier in the week for a project which in regional Victoria, which has a virtual component, but they also have a permit from council to do some street activities. So there's no reason that can't happen, but it is really making sure that it is in line with the restrictions at the time, and also that it's flexible. So, and the reason we're saying that is that we've had a number of projects that were funded in a different grant round before COVID. All of those projects were to take place face-to-face, and all of those projects have been postponed because they can't take place, which makes total sense. We don't want to be postponing projects. So all successful applications will need to take place before the end of April. So if your project is being proposed within the current restrictions for regional Victoria, and those restrictions change and become tighter, which we hope won't happen, but if that was the scenario, we would expect that your projects will still be able to be delivered. Yeah. So Jax, can you share your email contacts for follow-up? So the email on the screen at the moment, which is equality@dpc.vic.gov.au, is the best email for Marissa and I. Rory may also respond. Rory isn't here today, but may also be the person responding to any queries that come into that email address.
Great. We've got another question. I believe it's from Anna. Do you envision that there will be a 2021 PEFF grant round for events held after April 2021? I believe this grant round is in its 3rd year, and they are sort of approved by the minister. In terms of whether we have another one lined up, I'm not 100% sure at this stage.
Yeah, we expect there will be, but it's not guaranteed at this point. And the funding for a future round would be from the 2021-22 financial year. So any future round wouldn't be made available until after June 30, 2021. Yeah, so, but it's not guaranteed at this point. We expect there will be, but it's not signed off by the minister at this point. Agree.
Agree, definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. Good. Are there any more questions? No. No problem. Ben, Marissa and I will stay on the line. But for everyone else, thank you so much for coming. You know, everyone's probably hungry, ready for some dinner. So yeah, enjoy your evenings, and please reach out if you'd like to discuss your applications. Happy to chat, and yeah, and we look forward to reading your applications when they come in.
Yes, we do. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.